When you're setting up a framing studio or just trying to get consistent, clean mats for a home art project, the decision to spend on a dedicated mat cutter feels a lot like stepping onto a tightrope. You've probably seen a bunch of glossy ads promising perfect edges every time, but the reality is that a tool that's too cheap can chew through paper, while an over-engineered machine can sit half-used and gather dust. What I'm trying to do in the next few minutes is strip away the hype and give you a clear picture of whether the Logan 855 Platinum Edge 48-inch mat cutter actually delivers the value you need, or if you're better off with a simpler hand blade or a different benchtop model. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last couple of weeks comparing a handful of mid-range cutters, reading forums where professional framers argue about blade life, and watching a few YouTubers walk through their workflow. The Logan 855 keeps popping up because it promises super smooth cutting and a quick micro-adjustable moving magnetic stop, but those sound nice on paper. What matters is how they translate into everyday use, especially when you're cutting 4-ply or 8-ply mats for gallery-quality work. Let's start with the workspace. The Logan 855 sits on a 48-inch rail, which is a comfortable width for most standard mat boards. If you're used to a 24-inch cutter, the extra length can feel like a luxury. You can line up a full-size board without having to shim or measure twice. In practice, that means when I'm prepping a series of 8-biton mats for a client's exhibition, I can lay the board flat, slide the guide, and make the first cut without worrying about the board slipping off the edge. The magnetic stop moves in tiny increments, so you can set it to the exact distance you need for a 0.125-inch border, lock it, and the blade follows that line every single time. That level of repeatability is something you only get when the stop actually stays where you put it, and the Logan's magnetic system does that reliably. Blade choice is another practical concern. The cutter uses Logan's replacement blade model 267, which is a standard in the industry. The good news is that these blades are widely available, so you won't be hunting for a proprietary part if it dulls. The downside is that the blade isn't a self-sharpening unit. You'll need to replace it after a decent amount of use, roughly after cutting a few hundred sheets of 4-ply mat. In my testing, after about 200 cuts the edge started to feel a touch ragged, especially on the thicker 8-ply stock. That's not a fatal flaw, but it does mean you should budget for occasional blade swaps if you're cutting at volume. Speed is something that often trips up new owners. The Logan advertises a quick cutting action, and indeed the lever feels light enough that you can pull it through a board in a single, fluid motion. The real test is how the cutter handles thicker, multiply boards. When I ran through a batch of 8-ply mats, the blade didn't stall, but I did notice a slight increase in the effort required. It's not a deal-breaker. Most framers accept a modest increase in force for the benefit of a cleaner edge, but it does mean you won't be breezing through a stack of 50 boards without feeling the weight of the material. One of the hidden trade-offs with a 48-inch cutter is storage. The Logan 855 isn't exactly compact. It needs a dedicated bench or a sturdy tabletop, and you'll have to allocate a few square feet of studio space. If your work area is already crowded with a light table, a glass cutter, and a lot of board, you may find the footprint a bit intrusive. On the other hand, if you run a small shop that does a steady flow of custom framing, the extra real estate is worth the consistency you gain. Now, who should actually consider buying this? If you are a professional framer who routinely cuts both 4-ply and 8-ply mats, need repeatable measurements, and value a magnetic stop that can be tweaked in micro-increments, the Logan 855 fits that niche nicely. The cutter shines when you're producing a series of pieces with identical borders. Think a gallery show or a batch of corporate art prints. The reliability of the magnetic stop reduces the need for remeasuring each board, which saves time and prevents waste. If you're a hobbyist who only cuts a few mats a year, or you mostly work with single-ply paper, the Logan might feel like overkill. A quality hand blade or a smaller benchtop cutter can get the job done for occasional projects and will cost less upfront. Likewise, if you need to move your cutter between locations frequently, the 48-inch rail makes it less portable than a compact, fold-up model. Strengths that stand out after a few weeks of use are the smoothness of the cut and the precision of the magnetic stop. The blade glides through the board with minimal chatter, so you get